Today we're going to go for a test drive in my 1987 Buick Grand National. So the Grand National, I think, is a fairly interesting car. It was a notable car for the 80s. Obviously, horsepower, everything was down in the 80s, and muscle cars were few and far between. Corvettes were starting to make a little bit of a comeback. You're starting to see more and more cars that had some performance, and Grand National was one of those. The Grand National first came out in 1982, and it was a sorry, my door is not closed all the way. And it was a graphite gray, and it had a 175 horsepower turbocharged V6, which wasn't shabby, but wasn't you know what they could really accomplish. And in 1983 they did not have a Grand National, and then in 84 they came out with a 200 horsepower version, and in 86 they came up with a 245 horsepower version, which this car is. And in 1984 also, I'm sorry, they converted it to the all black paint scheme, which you've seen most Grand Nationals if you know the car. If you've seen my video on the ZR1 where I talk about the uniqueness of the option package, ZR1 option package, Buick had something very similar, and that was the GNX package, which is offered in 1987, the final year for the Grand National, and it was a $29,000 package. The ZR1 package was $31,000, and with that, the horsepower, they said, went from 245 to 275, but it was underrated and acknowledged. Actually, the horsepower was 300. And while this car is fast, that car was faster. But I mean, we're talking mid fours, 0 to 60, which again in the 80s was pretty exceptional. This car is just sneaky fast. I can't really get on it because of the car in front of it. You noticed when I turned onto the main street, the back end squirreled a little bit. I've got an 89 Turbo Trans Am, which there's also a video on, which, you know, is very similar. You punch it going 25 miles an hour and the wheels will break loose. This car is the same. So overall, I think the Grand National is, you know, was a fairly rare car for the Buick Regal body style, which is nothing to catch anybody's eye. I think the paint scheme and the wheels make this car a little bit of an eye catcher. It's a popular car when you take it out. And then I think with the performance, there were not many cars that could do sub 5 second 0 to 60 times in the 80s. There were not that many turbocharged cars at the time even. I think the only turbocharged cars in 87 when this was out was the Saab, Porsche, and I think a Mercedes. There was a Mercedes. So from that aspect, it was rare. So Buick always had, you know, some decent muscle cars. The GSX, the Grand Sports, Riviera Grand Sport, the Skylark Grand Sport, Phase 1 engines, always underrated in horsepower. So Buick has always been in the game for the muscle car space. This one was no exception, and probably one of the last ones that they had. So anyway, that's a ride in my 1987 Buick Grand National. Thanks for coming along.